Nobody warned me, not my doctor, not the books, not even other mom friends who had already had children. And then I had twins and everything changed down there. Hi, I'm Robin Pino and I gave birth to boy-girl twins in 2020 vaginally, but 2 forcep deliveries. So that, along with some additional birth trauma, gave me the wonderful gift, I'm being very sarcastic, of a multiple organ prolapse. And I have a video on TikTok with 1.4 million views talking about how I had this much organs hanging out of my vagina. But the hook that got me 1.4 million views was, this isn't easy to say, but I've been walking around with what looks like poop hanging out of my vagina. I didn't realize how good that hook was going to be. Later on in the video, I actually talk about how you need to picture this much of your uterus hanging outside of your body, which is how I lived for multiple years. So let's talk about what I wish I had known about pelvic floor health before my twins were born. So the first things first, a twin pregnancy just puts additional pressure on your body. You're carrying 2 babies. You're carrying more weight. There is additional weight then on your pelvic floor. You're also dealing with higher pregnancy hormones like relaxin and progesterone. And then pair that with a traumatic vaginal birth, it didn't look good for my pelvic floor. So unfortunately, and I'll share my traumatic birth story video, but I had not only 2 forcep deliveries, but I also had an episiotomy. I had retained placenta. They tried to manually extract it. I'm talking like full forearm into my vagina. That didn't actually get the retained placenta out, so I then had to have a DNC. So there was a lot happening to my pelvic floor. So it was no wonder that I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then as soon as we went home, I developed what an ER doctor called a vaginal wall prolapse. 2 weeks after I had my babies, we were finally discharged from the hospital. We go home, I stand up and I feel like a golf ball size of skin hanging out of my vagina. I thought I was losing my uterus. But there was even earlier signs that I was potentially going to be dealing with pelvic floor dysfunction. So before I even conceived the twins, I had started going to see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. It was a friend that I was actually training with. I was part of an OCR or obstacle course racing community when I lived in Toronto. And one of my friends was training to become a pelvic floor physiotherapist. I believe she offered some sessions to me while she was doing her practicum. And at that time, we discovered that I had a very tight pelvic floor, which is not an indication of a healthy pelvic floor. If you have a tight pelvic floor, you don't actually know how to relax. You need to know how to relax your pelvic floor, and you need to know how to strengthen or squeeze it. And so doing 1,000,001 Kegels isn't actually that great. So if you are pre-kids and you're watching this video for some reason, definitely go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist early so you can find out problems well before you're carrying children. During the pregnancy, one of the indications of pelvic floor dysfunction was I started peeing myself. People always talk about how pregnant women have to wear diapers, and I was in denial that I was gonna have to wear diapers. It even got to a point where my husband would pack an extra pair of pants and underwear for me because I was probably gonna pee myself at some point when we were out and I was gonna be embarrassed. And instead of me packing extra underwear and pants, he just packed it for me. I was in denial that it was gonna happen. I was also in denial that I could possibly hold my bladder. So that was the first sign of pelvic floor dysfunction. I just chalked it up to a twin pregnancy and started wearing diapers from that point till the end. Okay, quick story time. Let me give you the timeline for the multiple organ prolapse. And so in the hospital for 2 weeks, came home, this golf ball size, amount of skin protrudes out of my vagina. I think I'm losing my uterus. We go back to the ER and the ER doctor says you just have a vaginal wall prolapse. In hindsight, I wish I had gone to more pelvic floor physiotherapy sessions, but one, I was in the thick of postpartum. I was trying to keep 2 babies alive. It was the middle of the pandemic and I just didn't have the ability to make appointments as easily as I possibly could probably now. In hindsight, I wish I had gone to more appointments to see if it actually was something that I could have healed on my own. I think I had so much trauma that inevitably I was going to have to opt for surgery. But I do wish I had possibly proactively done a little bit more right after the babes were born. Really, my hope in making this video is that you seek pelvic floor physiotherapy and help much earlier in the process. Mine got so bad that I needed surgery, but I do wish I had potentially had earlier options. I'm going to give you the timeline of what I did to heal my multiple organ prolapses. If you're pregnant with twins or in the postpartum haze after having twins, 1, congratulations. 2, would you like this video and subscribe to the channel so that I know that this is the type of content that you would like to see. I'm here to tell you all about twin pregnancy, at least my experience, and what I wish other twin moms had told me. Okay, so what would I have done differently? Obviously with the pandemic, I wish I could have had more follow-up appointments from a pelvic floor physiotherapist standpoint early on. I wish I had not let it get as bad as it did. So I started off with like a stage or a level 2. I don't know how they grade them anymore, but it was very minor. There wasn't a lot of skin hanging out of my vagina. And that slowly got worse to a point where I had 3 organs hanging out. So I always thought it was just a vaginal wall prolapse because of the ER doctor that told me so. And I even went to see a urogynecologist, let's say 2 years after the babes were born, because I wanted to possibly get fitted for a pessary. And I didn't know I could get fitted for a pessary from a pelvic floor physiotherapist. So there are a lot of pelvic physiotherapists that are trained in fitting you for pessaries. Pessaries are devices that you can insert into your vagina that will lift up and hold the prolapse up so that you can do things like exercise or go for a run or for a walk. Unfortunately, the pessary that I was fitted with was not actually that great. It actually caused me to become constipated, or it would cause me to completely like void my bladder. So I would put it in, try to go for a walk, and end up peeing myself. That didn't work very well for me because I had so much of my organs actually hanging out. So when I finally opted for surgery later on, this was in 2025, I went to see a urogynecologist, and that was the first time I was told that I had 3 prolapses, a bladder, my uterus, and my rectum all protruding. Once that was discovered and my surgical options were provided to me, I was told that I could have a cystocele or rectocele, so that fixes the bladder and the rectal prolapse. And then the decision was made whether to do a hysterectomy or a hysteropexy. And we opted for the hysteropexy, where we save my uterus and suspend it. It was actually suspended to my sacrospinous ligament. I'll do a video on my full surgery, everything that led up to it and the healing process, but this is just things that I wish I had known during the pregnancy period. So one thing I will say, because of my birth trauma, I don't know if pelvic floor physiotherapy was something that could have healed my prolapse. I think, and surgeons have confirmed, that there was a lot of damage done to my pelvic floor, that my only option would have been surgery. So I wish I had been told that earlier on in the process, so I could have had the surgery much earlier instead of living with such a bad prolapse for so many years. And just the quality of life that came with that. I couldn't really walk properly, I couldn't run, it was constantly rubbing, I was really uncomfortable. It really affected my confidence, it affected just my mood. So I do wish I had considered surgical options much earlier in the process. So I had my babes in 2020. I didn't have my surgery until the end of 2025. So that's living with a prolapse for 5 years. So when I hear a mom saying that they have some heaviness in their pelvic floor or something's actually protruding out of their vagina, I tell them to run to a pelvic floor physiotherapist, because I wish that they get the care and attention that they deserve as early as possible, because that's something that I unfortunately didn't get. So if you're a twin mom and you're opting for a vaginal birth, please keep all of these things in mind and really advocate for yourself against the use of forceps or vacuums or episiotomy if possible, if that can be avoided, because any damage to your pelvic floor just means you're more apt to have a prolapse later on. All right, I hope you found this useful. Thanks for being here. Now go and live well, and I'll see you in the next video.